Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Minority Business Network of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, Colorful Conversations. I just wanted to let everybody know that we do have our chat feature enabled and our Q&A section as well. So if you do have any questions for our panelists along the way, feel free to type those in the chat. As this is a webinar setting, we cannot see or hear you in attendance, but we still would love to have your feedback. So we welcome anything you have to offer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Conway, Executive Director of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to take a brief moment to welcome you all to the second in our series of colorful conversations, which are facilitated by our Minority Business Network. Today's topic is going to be on barriers to access to technology in underrepresented and minority communities. It will be facilitated by Christopher Clark, the chairman of the Minority Business Network. And I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors for today's program: Comcast Business, Liberty Bank, the North Star Realtors, and Westfield Bank, who serves as our technology sponsor. I would like to now introduce Christopher Clark of Merrill, Bank of America, who is the chairman of the Minority Business Network.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. For those of you who this is the first time joining us for one of our Colorful Conversations. The Colorful Conversations is a series that we brought to light in order to expose some of the topics of conversation that are important to communities of color. Our previous Colorful Conversation discussed the impact of the elections on communities of color, and today we want to discuss barriers to entry for technology. For those of you who are not familiar with the Minority Business Network, we are a committee under the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, which seeks to provide access and resources to business owners and professionals of color within the greater Hartford community and beyond. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about technology and some of the barriers that exist to gaining access to technology for communities of color and business owners of color. Now, most of us take access to technology for granted. When you think about our day-to-day lives, the internet is virtually in the palm of our hands thanks to our mobile devices. But many of us don't have that access. And some experts estimate that more than 1/3 of minorities don't have access to broadband or broadband internet access. So imagine the impact that will have on education, the impacts it will have in business, and ultimately the survival of these communities. So as we discuss the barriers to technology in communities and how real they are, I wanted to pull together, we wanted to pull together a panel of experts. And we've gathered together some really talented and knowledgeable professionals, and wanted to have them discuss some of the barriers they encounter, some of the things that the impediments that some of their clients come across, and help us to propose some potential solutions. So I guess we'll start by having them introduce themselves. Firstly, I'd like to start with Jorge Castro of Discoverme. Jorge, if you'd like to take a couple of seconds to introduce yourself and Discoverme to the people.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. Christopher, it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Jorge Castro. I'm the founder of Discoverme, web services for small business. Essentially, the whole reason we exist is to finally provide small businesses and make sure that every small business can have access, can have affordable access to professional website services. So I'll keep the intro short and sweet there, and we'll talk about it more as we go along.
Sure. Thanks, Jorge. Next, we'll turn to Avi Smith-Rapaport of We Care Computers. Avi?
Hey guys, my name is Avi Smith-Rapaport. I run We Care Computers. We support small to medium-sized businesses throughout Connecticut and Western Mass. We are a managed services provider, which basically means we're an outsourced IT company for the companies we support. We love and support our community, and I guess we'll talk a lot about that as this meeting goes on. pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. This is fantastic.
No, thank you for being here, Avi, and thank you for the recommendation on the computer. And last but by no means least, Rahshun Balthrope of Comcast Business.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Rahshun Balthrope, Director of Comcast Business for Comcast Western New England region, which is located here in Connecticut. I've been with the company now for about 16 years and in my role with Comcast Business for 3 years. Comcast Business is dedicated to working with innovative leaders to enable secure enterprise-grade user experiences so that our customers can adapt and thrive in their current environment and in the future. Comcast Business is powered by an advanced network backed by a 24/7 customer support. We provide Ethernet, Internet, Wi-Fi, voice, TV, managed enterprise solutions to help organizations of all sizes transform their business. I am extremely pleased to be here today, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rahshun. I appreciate it, and we appreciate Comcast, sending one of their representatives to help us, shed some light on some of the things that we're seeing. So, this is weighty subject matter, and I think we should just dive into it. So I'll start by asking the major question. As professionals in technology, what do you see as the biggest technological impediment for your clientele, particularly for people of color? And anyone can feel free to dive in on that one.
I guess I'll jump in. All right, so Comcast has been long at the forefront of advancing digital equity, closing the digital divide and addressing both digital literacy and the homework gap in under-resourced communities. Beyond connectivity, we're also focused on providing educational opportunities and digital skills training to young people and adults to help them, to help ensure that everyone has the tools and resources they need to succeed in an increasingly digital world. Knowing that, we provide access to broadband internet across our Connecticut footprint, the most important remaining challenge is removing barriers that prevent local residents from adopting or subscribing to the internet at home. So even though access is available in their area, that's the challenge that we're seeing.
And Chris, if I could just follow up on that, I think, Rahshun said in terms of, access, it's really all about access. And I think three of the most common ways minority communities, sort of find themselves, limited with this access, is sort of in, I guess, in three broad categories, I would say. One, in terms of infrastructure, government, public policy, the actual having the poles and the wires and actually having the broadband and actually having that type of physical access. The second are some of the market barriers to access that that Discoverme was created to address that we'll talk about later, and also category of more of a kind of a social, more of a cultural aspect where for example with small businesses, small business owners tend to skew a little older, but doesn't have to be much older for somebody to be on the other side of the technology gap, to have grown up sort of not accustomed to social media, not grown up, sort of online, sort of in that way. So technology is a little bit of a different animal. It's not quite so easy to navigate. Like on the TV commercials where the Muppets are always trying to tell you how easy it is to make a website. I said, well, like most things on TV, it doesn't really work that way, in real life. So I think in terms of, some of the social, especially in minority communities, language, can also be an issue. Folks for whom English is not their first language, that's going to put up another barrier. So I think in terms of infrastructure and public policy, the market and more sort of cultural people type things, I think those are the three broad categories in which we see these barriers really manifest.
Yeah, you and I joked around about it the other day, Jorge, where we're not that far along in the age spectrum, but we're both of an age range where the idea of using the internet as a source for writing a paper in college was something your professor frowned upon. It wasn't a viable source. Now, in today's day and age, it is the source for all information, right? And access to all information. You know, Avi,
I just want to pop in there too, because I love all this conversation. One thing that we found out when COVID started back last March was, well, great, there's internet around and all that, but you need a device in order to access that. So once school started going virtual and all that, we put our heads down. We're like, what can we do to help the situation? And we came up with the Students in Need program. So we basically partnered with so many resources, I can't even name them all, that were helpful in feeding us gently used equipment, and we would refurbish them all, clean them, that kind of thing. And it was fantastic. The feedback was amazing. We got out many devices into the communities around Hartford and beyond, and it's been fantastic. And to me, if we need to teach our children, and if they don't have access to learning, to me, that's one of the biggest problems. So I was really happy to shed some light on this, because to me, I had no clue. Like you said before, technology is everywhere. It's in my hand. I have multiple computers, like whatever. But that's not the way it is for everyone. So that was a big hole we saw, and we're working hard towards helping with that, and always looking for more partners to help as well.
Yeah, so I absolutely want you to take a deeper dive into that in just a second, but I want to circle back, you know, to Rahshun's comments on adoptability, right? Like, so the infrastructure may be there, but you're not seeing, in some cases, we're not seeing high adoptability. And I think that kind of ties into the stuff that Avi was just saying. Rahshun, like, what are you seeing as barriers to that adoptability? Why is it that some people just aren't taking advantage of the broadband if it's there in their communities?
Yeah, I mean, so at Comcast, how we're looking at it, and I think Jorge had touched on it a little bit, and so did Avi. But at Comcast, there are 3 barriers to internet adoption that we help to address. So those barriers include lack of access to low-cost, high-speed internet service, right? The second one would be lack of a computer. Third one would be lack of digital skills. So adoption barriers impact, low-income individuals, family or community, including small businesses. So we're addressing the home internet barriers to adoption through Internet Essentials, our Internet Essentials program. So we're providing low-cost internet service with speeds up to 50 megs for only $9.95 per month plus tax. The second thing is we're making subsidized internet-ready laptops available for new customers to purchase for $149.99 plus tax. And the third is by providing digital literacy training online and in print. So we are also helping small businesses through our Comcast Rise program, which was introduced to help strengthen local small businesses that were hit hardest by the economic impact of COVID-19. So these are massive problems, but we are providing massive solutions.
I mean, that's a beautiful start to it. When you think about some of these factors, right? I think it was the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies that estimated 1 out of 4, so roughly 25% of Black people don't have access to the internet outside of a smartphone, right? So most of us go, oh, well, you have your smartphone, so you do have internet access, right? But then you're limited based on, the structure of your plan. So, the amount of data that you can use during the course of a given month limits the size and the amount of information that you can access. And, I don't know about any of you, if you've ever tried to do a full-on assignment as a school child with a smartphone, it can be daunting. It's great to peck out a quick email or a fast response, but to draft an entire paper. So how do we find workarounds for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to go back to like the Internet Essentials program that we do have. Things like that, it's just really educating the community, just making sure, hey, that these things are available. trying to assist. I love what, I think it was Avi, what he was talking about as far as getting the refurbished equipment and cleaning it up. Just having low cost ways of just getting access to the internet besides your phone, to your point, Chris. I mean, that doesn't work. That doesn't work, especially if you're trying to do much more than just sending a basic text or an email. So I just think it's more or less the education, just people knowing exactly where to go so that they can get help.
Yeah, which is huge, absolutely huge. Like one of the things, anybody who has any exposure to me knows that I use this phrase a lot. You can't ask for access to a room if you don't know the building exists, right? So part of it becomes that marketing. Part of it becomes that sharing of the knowledge, and in very grassroots terms, right? The idea of each one teach one. As somebody learns about it, encouraging them that if you know somebody who can benefit from that, to spread the word, because they may not necessarily be privy to the marketing as it exists. So let's talk a little bit about scope, right? So we talked a little bit about the problems that exist. What do you think is the scope of this problem? Like how far reaching is it? Because we talked a little bit about the numbers and the percentages of people, but is it limited specifically to urban communities? Are we seeing this in rural pockets of people of color? How wide does this technology desert span?
Well, if I can, I'll kick it off on that one. In terms of strictly small businesses, this was really the stat that really blew me away. In a lot of ways, sort of inspired the very creation of Discoverme, was the fact that nearly 40%, it's estimated, of all small businesses in America, across industries, across communities, do not have their own website, don't have a website at all. And that's not even counting the many, many more that have websites that may be old or outdated, may not be performing up to modern standards. And you've just had this enormous chunk of the small business market basically being priced out. And it's really, it's a problem all over the country, in every type of community. But of course, like anything else, like pretty much anything else in America, it tends to affect minority communities, even more so. It's a problem that's exacerbated even more, in minority communities. And, that's from the market perspective, what we really saw was there just isn't an option out there for folks. For years, anyone who either had a small business and wanted to get online and get a website, or wanted to start a new business and know that nowadays you need a website, the choices for folks have been basically pay $5,000 or more to some random firm you Google search, or do it yourself, or go without. And for small businesses, anybody that's ever, had any kind of small business, I mean, $5,000, that's a lot of money. I mean, for a lot of small businesses, that's the difference between surviving and not, between going out of business and between making it through, and not. So that's one of the places where this kind of gap, this gulf, has really not just existed, but really sort of grown over time. And hopefully we can be a part of sort of bringing that back together and making sure that everyone has access. That's really the key word at the end of the day is access.
So 40% of small businesses, right? And most businesses in the United States are small businesses, right? So that's a huge drought of representation on the internet. And as you said, like most other pandemics, for lack of a better word, they adversely or disproportionately affect communities of color. Why do you think there's such a lack of representation for it? Why do you think there's so few of these companies have internet representation? I mean, cost is a major factor, but what other variables are we seeing?
Well, I think cost was the primary driving factor sort of in this particular sort of gap widening, because for years, there's essentially two ways to create a website. You can use templates, which is what you see on TV, Squarespace, GoDaddy, WordPress, Wix. Those are all template sites. Or a site could be custom built. You get a programmer or developer that builds each site from the ground up. And that's how websites traditionally have always been created. But that's a very labor-intensive process, even for the most basic sites. So I tell folks, think of if you were building a house. If you were only starting with a pile of lumber and a hammer, the house doesn't have to be very big. It's still going to be very labor-intensive. It's still going to take you a while to build even a small house. That's basically what it's been with websites. Is building even the smallest, most simple website would take 30 to 48 hours or more of custom programming. So that $4,000 or $5,000 cost wasn't too many ways around that. Wasn't too much that could be done about it. And as the do-it-yourself technology, as the technology has improved, become more accessible, and as the do-it-yourself guys have grown, they've provided that other option for folks that didn't have the $5,000 or more, but that did need a website. But unfortunately, as I mentioned before, it's like anything else on a TV commercial. It doesn't work that way in real life. It would be like walking into Burger King and expecting the burger they serve you to look like the one in the TV commercial. Like,
one of the hugest disappointments.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you're gonna be disappointed. So it was really all about it's kind of creating that middle ground option, where what we're able to do is for as little as $500 instead of $5,000 or more, create a website for a professional website for a small business, essentially marrying the best of both worlds, taking the do-it-yourself tools, putting them in the hands of a professional. So instead of it taking 30, 40 hours or more to create the website, the professional can do it in perhaps 4 to 6. And that's essentially, but for years, without that option, there was simply no way around the cost.
Right.
The do-it-yourself has provided that first outlet, and we hope to take it to that next level where it's okay, you don't have to do it yourself. You can hire professionals who can do it, and it's actually affordable. You can actually afford this. Any small business can get online, can get that exposure, can get the shine that the little guys so often don't get. As we say, we invite folks to introduce your business to the world.
So that addresses the affordability part, right? And some of the labor barriers. But so it kind of goes back to the other problem of knowing the building exists. So with some of these small businesses, how do they find you? If they're not, because this is assuming they already have internet access and they already know, hey, I should be conducting a Google search of some sort, assuming they know what Google is. Most people do, just from the common lexicon. But how do we work around that? How do people find a company like Discoverme if they're not directly online?
Well, that's exactly what back to sort of what Rahshun was saying in terms of the education, and that's been one of the challenges for us, is that nowadays all of the marketing, all of the things that you hear, are very focused around digital marketing. You hear buzzy terms, like ClickFunnels and pay-per-click ads and all of this, and all of this different. So all of these different tools. But when most businesses, don't have a client list or a list of emails or a list of phone numbers, they're just already behind. They're just already behind the game, from the beginning.
So it kind of falls to the service providers to provide them with that education, to bring them into the modern technology and ultimately help them do more and better business, or even cleaner business.
And most folks, simply don't know, because a company like this, has not existed. And we're actually we're actually going to be launching, sort of right now in April. So we're we're a brand new company. We're a brand new company ourselves. So it's really going to be about letting folks know that this option exists, because for so long, it just in the existing market, for example, if it didn't appear to be in anyone's interest to sort of change this, because if you were the guys making the $5,000 websites and you're getting $5,000 and more for a website, well, why would you come up with a way to do it, to do it for 500? So it kind of just became this just underserved chunk of market that just, that just unfortunately grew and grew. And like you said, most small businesses, people I think often tend to forget this when, sort of the news, the stock market, everything's dominated. We hear about is Amazon taking over the world and all the big companies, but how in reality, what is it? 80 to 85% of all businesses in America are small businesses.
Right.
And if 40% of those don't have a website at all, and let's say another, I don't know how many, I don't have a reliable number for this, but it could be another 10, 20, or 30% that maybe did the best they could with a website. Maybe went to Fiverr or Upwork or overseas, or had a family member or a student, or they did it themselves and did the best they could. But it's simply not up to, modern standards. It's not like 15 years ago where you could buy a URL address and you could literally put a picture of your business card, kind of up on this URL and tell people, hey, I'm online. I'm on the web. You can find me at www.whatever-my-name-is.com, and there I am. I mean, as I'm pretty sure we all know nowadays, the way Google and the algorithms and the way modern SEO works, that's just not going to cut it anymore.
So, Avi, Rahshun, did either one of you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, it's not a secret. While the pandemic has really presented economic challenges for everyone, BIPOC-owned small businesses have been amongst the hardest hit, right? So nationally, the pandemic forced 22% of US-based businesses to close between February to April 2020. Black-owned businesses, however, have been hit much harder, with active African-American businesses declining by 41%.
41, yeah.
And minority communities experiencing declines of 36% for immigrants, 32% for Latinx, and 26% for Asian business owners. So Comcast is helping to pretty much strengthen these small businesses through our Comcast RISE program. So RISE stands for representation, investment, strength, and empowerment. The program is really awarding hundreds of Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned small businesses with marketing and tech resources. So Comcast RISE is part of a larger $100 million diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that Comcast launched, announcing the development of a comprehensive multi-year over the next 3 years to fight injustice and inequality. So there's most definitely work to be done. I know that we're in the trenches. We're trying to help. By the way, a small plug, forgive me, Chris, small plug. We are hiring for Comcast Business. And I will say this, we don't get a lot of Asian, Latinx, or Black applicants that apply. So please apply if interested. It's another way we can help.
We will absolutely forgive you for that plug, because there are always going to be people out there who are interested in finding their next opportunity. So thank you for putting that out there, Rush.
And Chris, one thing you also asked before was about how are going to people find you, or how are people going to get access if they don't have access? And one of the things that, perfectly right behind what you're sitting behind, it's the chambers of commerce or local business communities. West Hartford Chamber, you created the Minority Business Network in tandem with the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, and that's a fantastic resource. So I think that's where I met Jorge at a Chamber of Commerce event for the first time. So I think us going out there, and even though I know we're all technology and we're very big into technology, still that word of mouth, sharing the stories that yes, you can go to these meetings and people are not going to bite you. If you shake their hand and introduce yourself and tell them what your business is or what you're looking to do out there, I think those efforts can be huge, especially for the businesses we're talking about that don't necessarily have the capital right now or the connections of who they're going to use to launch their businesses.
Yeah, and yeah, just to piggyback off of Avi, Christopher, if I didn't completely answer your question before in terms of how to find folks, you know, sort of that aren't online, and you know, and Avi said it in terms of chambers. That's one of our core, going to be one of our core strategies from the very beginning, was to get known within networks of small business, within chambers, within different small business groups. Within, you know, local community business groups like SAMA, the Spanish American Merchants Association in Hartford, to let, you know, to really be on the ground and let folks know, like, hey, there is another option, and that hopefully once a couple of businesses are able to take advantage and say, hey, listen, there's an option. We can actually get a professional website, and that's the other thing, we provide all the background service and support. Previously website transactions were very transactional. Where it was, here's $5,000, here's your website, good luck to you. So I think, we're looking to be able to provide, it's really become an essential modern business service. That's how important websites are nowadays. I tell folks, anybody who's old enough to remember when the yellow pages were a thing. Before the internet, the yellow pages, that was Google. That was where you went to find a service, a business, whatever you were looking for. But if you had a business and you weren't in that book, well, guess what? You didn't really exist. And that's what it's becoming nowadays with Google, with the internet. If you don't have a website, if you're not on social media, if you don't have an online presence, if somebody can't easily Google you, can't find you online, you're all but invisible. So it's it's definitely a big issue, big problem.
So that's part of the fear, right? When you think about particularly the greater Hartford area and in Hartford proper, and so many of these small businesses that are mainstays in the community. So many of these small businesses that have been there for multiple generations, and they don't have that web presence, and they don't have the marketing or the client the contact management lists and so forth. For younger generations of people, if you're not on the web, you don't exist. Like, if somebody meets you, what's the first thing they do? They go out, or they get your business card, they go to your website and check it out, or they look for your Facebook or your Instagram presence and so forth. Or if it's a professional interaction, business to business, maybe your LinkedIn. But local mom and pop shops or local restaurants don't have that presence. Does it become marketing? Well, and take it even a step further, like the idea of chambers of commerce. A lot of particularly people of color don't necessarily join these chambers of commerce, which is kind of the reason we created the Minority Business Network. Do you, as a group, do you think that it makes sense to form some sort of boots on the ground kind of door knocking? I mean, granted, when the world reopens, but door knocking marketing initiative to spread the word of these services and bring these businesses into the future?
I guess I can jump in on that. I think it's a fantastic idea. There are things that we're actually doing right at this moment. I've mentioned Comcast Rise a couple of times right now. So across Connecticut, a dozen small businesses from New Haven to Hartford, and ranging from like restaurants, hair salons to professional services and retail shops, were recently accepted as the first round of Comcast Rise recipients. So including Alternity Healthcare LLC, based right here in West Hartford. So we are still accepting applications for small business owners to apply to Comcast Rise through May 7th. So what you get with that, if you are accepted, applicants will gain access to resources that include complimentary equipment, and technology makeovers, upgrades from Comcast Business that can include a computer, internet, voice, and cybersecurity, complementary advertising and marketing consultations with local effective marketing, research and creative teams, and creation of a 30-second commercial. So we also are offering complimentary linear TV media campaigns to run over a 90-day period. So I feel that, Comcast right now, we are trying to do that boots on the ground, even though we're not officially outside, but we are trying to get to that point where we're making folks aware of what we have and how we could actually help. Our whole big thing is just trying to really be poised and, vested with trying to help the community just to really bounce forward.
Rahshun, I will say, that is tremendous. Shame on me because I didn't even know it existed. And, we absolutely need to let people know how they can apply.
Yes. So that's through ComcastRise.com. And like I said, we're accepting applications through May 7th. And there will be other waves after that as well. But this wave right here is May 7th.
Okay. That is awesome. So we'll make sure to get that information out. We had a question that came up in the chat from Nicole Brown. And Nicole said, I noticed that many small businesses are using Facebook and Instagram to advertise their businesses. Many of these do not have a website outside of these medias. Are you finding that this has become the new solution to the price of having a website? And what do you suggest to these businesses as far as the advantage to having a website in addition?
In terms of the Facebook as an option, that's something that we've seen for years now, and that's simply one of the workarounds when folks were faced with that choice of spending $5,000 or more or doing it yourself. They did the best they could, and one of the things that they would do is connect their Facebook page as their website. But unfortunately, I haven't seen a single case where that works out in terms of with a restaurant, even being able to find the menu or being able to make out any of the information. The Facebook pages tend to be very, very cluttered, very busy. They're simply not sort of made for what a website is made for, which is basically think of it as your storefront, as your virtual storefront. When someone wants to know about you, someone wants to find out about you, check you out, especially for a business, that's the first place they're going to go. That's the easiest place for you to be able to put your best foot forward and tell the world about your business, as opposed to, whatever Google feels like writing about you, if they happen to feel like writing anything about you at all. If you've ever gone, sort of looked for a menu online and seen like Google's version. When I go to my favorite Peruvian restaurant, or when I'm looking to order from there, I want to see their menu. I don't want to see Google's interpretation of their menu. So
almost like Google is almost like hearing it secondhand, is what you're saying.
Right.
And this gives you an opportunity to tell your own story.
Yep. And what a website allows you to do is gives you that direct reach, gives you that direct content. And nowadays, one of the really neat things is all of the things you can do with the data. There's so much analytics. Anybody that's a sports fan has seen the role that analytics has come to play in professional sports. The amount of information out there is really staggering. We're really just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of what this type of data will do for us. But even now, for the average small business owner, it's very easy to sort of get on Google Analytics and see how many people are coming to my site. Not only that, where are they visiting me from? How are they finding me? There's all kinds of neat stuff to find. And that's actually one of the things that we also do to sort of bridge that gap in terms of education or comfort with technology. One of the things we do is, even with our most basic, our $500 basic package, every time we create a website, we always include the year's worth of background service and support. So we take care of all of that stuff on the back end, and we make sure everything is taken care of so that the business owner can do what they do, can focus on what they do best.
But it raises an interesting question, because in building and going back to what Nicole proposed. So in building a website versus using social media, like a lot of these social media engines, you know, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the LinkedIns, they provide analytics. They provide analytics of your interface with your followers, you know, the visitors to your pages. Granted, you know, you may have to pay up for some of those analytics if you have a business site, but it's there. So with the advent of and the access of that data, you know, is it more of a, you know, a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other situation when it comes to building your own website? Or, you know,
well, what the website can do is in combination with the social media, you know, it's really a force multiplier, because social media, that's, you know, and that's something you really should do both, because in social media, number one, you can sign up for free. So that really can't beat. And even if you don't feel like I don't consider myself an expert poster or, you know, posting things or anything like that, but it allows, you know, small business folks to build that following, to kind of build that fandom and kind of build that, build that following. And then when they have a website, they're able to say, hey, come check out, you know, come check out our menu, come check out this, come check out, you know, that we're doing. And what the social media does, the more engagement you have on your social media pages, that feeds into your website. And what it does is it helps the SEO for folks out there that may hear that word thrown around a lot. You know, SEO
what exactly is SEO?
SEO is search engine optimization. And it's basically all of the little factors that go into where your business comes up in a Google ranking, whether it comes up 1st or 5th or 10th or on page 2 or 5. So that, in the broadest sense, is, you know, is what it is the little things that you do that make you appear higher on searches. And having engagement with your social media is huge in being able to help your website. And again, it doesn't need to be a fancy website. It doesn't need to be anything super sophisticated, but having the engagement. When Google sees that people are coming to your website, they're checking out your social media, you're posting things, you're updating the content on your website, Google is looking at this and saying, hey, this is an active business. They're happening. They got things going on. This is stuff that people want to see. So we're going to put that, you know, higher up in our rankings. And that's, you know, and so social media is absolutely the ideal first step for those businesses that have not been able to afford a website. Now that they can afford a website, if they've already got that social media presence built in, it will help blow the website up even faster, and the two will help each other.
So they work in tandem. So the social media is ultimately the driver to your website, which, you know, helps optimize your searches on Google, which improves your marketing and you know, ultimately hopefully your client
brings more eyes to your page, to the name of your business. You know, and it just, as I said, it becomes sort of a force multiplier, and they feed off of each other. You know, because when we Google something, you know, how often do you guys look at a page 2, never mind 3? You know, so all of those little things are so important.
Yeah. So I want to pivot just a little bit, because we talked a lot about the impacts on businesses. You know, I want to talk a bit more about the impacts on families, right? You know, I'm a single dad of 3 daughters, and I have said since the beginning of this pandemic that homeschooling will be the death of me, right? But I have broadband access in my home, spotty as it may be at times, but I have it. You know, I have devices for my kids to use. You know, Avi, you know, you mentioned a little bit about the kind of work that you're doing tangentially to your job to help families. What are some of the impacts that you're seeing on families and this lack of technology? Some of the impacts you're seeing this lack of technology is having on families, and talk a little bit about the work you're doing to help.
Sure. For our We Care work, we're dealing mostly with businesses, but for our, I think you're talking about for our Students in Need program, we connected with a bunch of different school systems, and we got a lot of great feedback. I mean, we have families that when COVID hit, not only were kids not being able to go into their schools, their parents weren't able to go into work. So now you have, and there are some families that maybe don't have 5 machines, right? And
Right.
then you're sharing machines, and that becomes a whole problem as well. So from our standpoint, there's so much more need than we we could ever imagine, and I'm happy that my eyes were open to it, and we just need more help. My company's a small company. We're doing the work that we're doing, and we're doing as much as we can on the side. And yeah, anyone who hears this or is listening out there, that any help would be fantastic, because I think we don't even know how much need there is out there. And not just for the kids, the parents who are trying to do their own work for their companies.
Sure. So you touched on a very interesting point. The fact that, you may have a machine in the house, but this brought to light that you don't have 5 machines or 5 devices in your house for every member of your family. I mean, I know I was absolutely in that position where, I had my junk PC down in the basement. I had my work laptop, and, you can't access many or most sites from your work laptop. And I think my oldest daughter had a laptop, and the little ones had little devices, but nothing sufficient to be connecting to a Google Meets for class, or nothing sufficient to be typing up papers or typing up assignments. So
if you have multiple people in the house, not everyone has a home office in their basement, or has a place where they can kind of retreat, and have that and have that peace and quiet. There's days here where our kitchen table, for example, has become my office, my high school age daughter's sort of work school. It's become a makeshift TV studio now. There's kind of all of I sometimes joke about how we get this little sort of window when you're talking to someone, but right off screen we've all got cats and dogs wanting attention. We've got dishes that need to be done, laundry, kids that need to be picked up or helped with schoolwork. There's all of these things happening sort of all around us every minute of every day. And when you're facing those extra barriers, in these communities where, as I said, everything is just exacerbated. Everything is just sort of dialed up. And I know the one thing I think of from over last summer was, I don't know if anyone remembers the footage of the kids. I don't remember if it was in maybe Texas. I forgot where exactly it was, but of the kids that were going to Taco Bell every day, and would sit either outside the restaurant, on their phone or on a tablet, trying to do their homework with Taco Bell Wi-Fi. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to get on Wi-Fi at a Taco Bell or a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. To say it's unreliable is kind of putting it mildly. So, when you see kids, when you see families, the lengths that they go to, to overcome, is really, it's really, I mean, it's sad in a lot of ways, but it's also inspiring. But it should inspire us to say, hey, what the hell are we doing? We need, this is something we need to fix.
Yeah, and let's talk about the inverse, right? Because we're talking about it a lot from the perspectives of students and the families. What about the teachers, right? So now the teacher, you have teachers who, depending on the location of their school, depending on where they're living, may not have access to broadband outside of the school building, or may not have access to reliable broadband. How does that impact? It's not just impacting one family now. This is impacting all of the families that this teacher touches. So how? And I'm not sure if that goes too deep into or goes outside of the purview of what you've been trying to help with, Avi. But are you seeing any of that where teachers aren't having devices or teachers need additional supports?
We're not getting much feedback on that, other than I'm very friendly with a number of teachers who've shared their their issues and concerns and frustrations. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't have much on that.
yeah, I could say, being a dad and helping my kids with their connectivity issues and logging in and so forth, there are absolutely times where classes is canceled
Yeah.
because it's creating a draw, or there's such a draw on the broadband, or the teacher's device is conked out, or what have you. So if that's happening in West Hartford, I can only imagine the impacts in other communities that don't have the supports.
One thing
Yeah.
that was super interesting to us is well, as humans, we make assumptions. So when this all started, like, oh, we'll give out machines. We assumed where machines would go. I mean, machines have gone everywhere in the Valley, in Hartford, in down a little more south. I mean, there's need everywhere. And I think one of the things that I hope many people learn through this COVID is to watch our assumptions out there. That's been a big thing for me to throughout a lot of this. I think I've learned and grown a lot, and I think it's been helpful for my business and what we're putting out there.
Yeah, and I think along that point, one of the things that's that's worth mentioning is that this is also an issue in rural communities, and it's not just necessarily in minority communities. A lot of rural communities deal with a lot of the same issues in terms of access, sort of infrastructure, sort of resources. So especially nowadays, we tend to hear of everything in very sort of polarized, divided in terms of this camp or that camp. But this truly is a problem that I think is worth mentioning. Does extend, as I said, like anything else in this country, it affects minority businesses. Minority communities more. But that doesn't mean it's not affecting everyone, or it's not affecting other communities as well. So there's a lot of rural communities that are dealing with a lot of these same issues.
Right. So even going deeper and wider than it just being a racial issue, it's more of, would you say it's a geographical and socioeconomic issue?
Yeah, I think we tend to think of the divide, or at least the way we hear about it on TV, as sort of red versus blue, where I think the divide in this country is really, I mean, obviously besides the obvious racial factors, really more urban versus rural. Because I think, if anyone's ever lived in the South or traveled extensively, spent any time down South, you find that in the big cities, the cities are just like cities, sort of pretty much anywhere else. And you also tend to find that cities are overwhelmingly democratically controlled. And most major cities are that way. But the more you get into rural areas, the more you don't find diversity, the more you find not only conservative thought, but a lack of diversity. And I think that contributes a lot to how easy it is to stoke the fear of those people, of they're coming to get you. Well, when you grow up in a place where there are no of the others, there is no other, it's very easy to demonize as those people that, if you simply don't know. So I think in a lot of ways, the divide tends to fall more along the urban-rural divide more than anything.
And Rahshun, it looked like you had something to add.
Yeah, so just going back to something you guys were talking about before, we have a couple of different solutions. So we have other initiatives that we're working in tandem to create a range of connectivity options to meet people exactly where they are. So we have Internet Essentials. We have our Internet Essentials Partnership Program, and we also have another program called Lift Zones. So I'll touch on each one of them briefly. So for Internet Essentials, this program really addresses the lack of access to low cost, high speed internet. Now, I already mentioned that it's $9.95 per month. The lack of a computer, we're trying to come up with a solution there where we have a low cost computers. But I love, like I said, once again, what Avi was talking about, those refurbished ones. This one here is $149.99 plus tax. We also talked about the lack of digital skills, the things that we're doing, we're providing training for that as well. The Internet Essentials Partnership Program, in 2020, the Internet Essentials program was introduced to help accelerate internet adoption even further. So this enables cities, school districts, and other organizations to fund and quickly connect large numbers of students and families to broadband access at home. So this program, which really relies on public and private partnerships, enables entire communities to work together to coordinate funding to help connect K through 12 students. We also have lift zones as well. So I mean, the thing is, what I'm trying to really get at here, we understand the issues that are going on in these communities. And I love, what Jorge is saying. It's not just in Black communities or Latinx communities. It's hitting wider. It's a bit wider. So with lift zones, when most of the state implemented like social distancing, community centers such as the Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs had suddenly saw a higher demand on their Wi-Fi networks. So as they took students in, parents needed to leave the house for work, and then eventually everybody came back in. But the thing is, we didn't have internet, so what we were trying to do, we were really just trying to connect in a larger scale. So in response, Comcast is installing lift zones to provide facilities with free internet connectivity and access to hundreds of hours of educational and digital skills content to help families and site coordinators to navigate online learning. So like I said, guys, there's a ton of issues out there, but the thing is, we have to try to come up with some solutions. And to your point, Chris, if you don't know what a freaking address to the building is, how are you going to do it? And that's the piece that I think all of us really just need to get better at, is just really communicating these things out.
So that leads to what was the question rattling around in my head, because you described these lift zones, and it sounds like, it is a possible solution to some of the problems that people face in these communities. How do people in a community find the lift zone?
Yeah, so in Connecticut, we have 13 Wi-Fi connected lift zones now open for their members, and 12 more are currently in the works. Comcast is really committed to launching more than 1,000 of these Wi-Fi connected lift zones in community centers nationwide. So, I mean, that's the plan. Not going to say it's late, but it's here, and we're moving as quickly as we can. The whole thing is, though, Chris, we just have to continue to communicate. That's the bottom line. We just have to communicate. So everyone that's here on this call right here, we all have to work together to make sure we're getting all these things out. And I love everything that Jorge and Avi have been talking about. This is just freaking fantastic. This has been great. I'm a firm believer that, if we all lift in the same direction, we move a lot more, right? So to that point, everyone, as you're listening and, as you're watching us, take note of contact information, make sure to reach out to the chamber, make sure to reach out to the panelists and see how you can actively help. Looks like we had another question that came in, and I think this was directed to you, Rahshun. I was a customer of Internet Essentials for 5 years. I was a customer of Internet Essentials 5 years ago when my son was in school. I'm not sure if things have changed, but it was easy for me to get it because I was new to Comcast. My sister was not able to because she already had Comcast Internet. Has accessibility to the program broadened? Can those who have higher costing internet service with Comcast be able to switch to Internet Essentials as need arises? Yes. Simple answer. Yes.
Yeah. So there is flexibility if someone has a change in their which happens, right? You have a change in your financial situation. You have a change in your home situation. Internet Essentials is now something that you can apply for or have access to.
Correct. So the application information is available online for that. So definitely, please reapply.
So we will absolutely get that out to her. I don't know if there's still a need, but it's a great piece of information.
And it's internetessentials.com. Internetessentials.com.
Right. So as an entire panel, I wanted to open up, because we've talked a little bit about the solutions and recommendations for people who are facing, barriers to their access, whether it be for establishing connectivity for their business, or an internet presence for their business, or even some of the resources that are available to help families and individuals as they're struggling, particularly through this pandemic. Yeah. So I just wanted to open up to the panel for any additional suggestions or recommendations to try and help navigate your way through these technological difficulties that we're having currently, and potentially for the foreseeable future.
The only thing I'd love to suggest is just to, I think Rahshun said it, communicate, look out for the resources that are out there to provide support. I imagine depending on the community you're in, hopefully you have a Chamber of Commerce as fabulous as we do right here in our community, and that they can help connect you to various, whatever you need, vendors that you need for whatever you're looking to do. And another big thing to do is, when you are able to support the causes that may have supported you in the past, hey, who else is going to support it if it's not you? So I would say if we all take it on ourselves to help be the change we want to see, there might be some change out there. So that's all I got, really.
Anybody else?
I guess I will jump in. So I'll just repeat myself again. Really, it's all about spreading the word in your communities, to your to your family, your coworkers, your friends, and any resources that are available in the West Hartford community to both help with small business owners and low-income individuals and households adopt the internet. So to get more information, again, guys, I'll give those two websites: ComcastRise.com. For small business owners. And to learn more about Internet Essentials, go to internetessentials.com. These are two ways that we can drastically and dramatically help the impacted.
So we had another comment / question. This is pretty lengthy, but they wanted to open it up to all the panelists. It led out with: a digital tool, if not used strategically, is just a tool that sits there. So going back to the idea of marketing these tools and providing direct access for the people who need them. They were hoping to get some sort of feedback from the panel on this comment. But the person who posted said, "I was on a Clubhouse room last night, and the discussion was on building consumers' trust. As a data-driven agency, we find 87% of our consumers that hear about any business that they might be interested in, whether it's through TV, radio, print ad, or even if it's through word of mouth, through a Chamber of Commerce meeting or Zoom meeting, a hot lead from a friend or family member. 87% go to your website to check you out first. The majority of which search through and look for you through Google. What do you see in terms of being experts in this field? Like, are you finding that that people are conducting the same kind of searches? Is it the same high percentage of people who, whenever they hear about you, they go to Google first to look for your information? How do you look different if you don't look different? We find that, I think they might have been typing this pretty quickly, trying to peck it out. But basically, what are you seeing in terms of that data? What are you seeing in terms of people conducting those searches, and how is this hindering businesses? I guess it's the point they were trying to get.
I've definitely seen what they're writing. That most people that we know are definitely checking us out on Google, checking out what others say, or just looking at how we are. We have a lot of people check out what we do in the community. These days, we're seeing that a lot of consumers are making decisions on who they give their money to, on maybe what the company stands for. So like dealing with integrity is fantastic out there to us. But definitely people will check you out. I imagine I've been married forever, so I don't do this, but I hear people now when they meet someone or that they're looking to date that they're going to check them out online, see what they do, all that kind of stuff. Same thing with companies. People want to know what you do, who's on your team, what you do out there, what you stand for. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, to go off of that, I think that's something that's only going to grow. You know, because something I think in the future, websites. You know, I think we're going to have personal websites in the future, and I think, you know, in years to come, I think they're going to end up replacing resumes, the way that we've known them. Instead of that one sheet of paper, or even you know, or even the file of the one sheet of paper. Instead, in the future, I think what people are going to have links, where an employer could just click that link. That's that person's page. That will we'll still have the traditional sort of resume information, but where a person will be able to display their individuality, display some of their skills and talents, make it a more visual, a more interactive, you know, sort of experience. So, you know, I think that's one of the things that where this is going in the future. You know, and we are so at the very beginning. You know, we are still, you know, you think about how far technology has come, you know, how fast, and we are still in the very infancy of this journey.
Rahshun, you're on mute.
How many times did we hear that?
One of the many barriers, right?
So, you know, Jorge said this earlier about Google owning your business, like when they're talking about your business. You know, you really want to be able to be the one to really speak about your business. So having that website is vital. I think customer testimonials are another big piece, you know, that you may have on your website talking about your website and your business and how you're helping. You know, just your brand recognition across, you know, the board itself, what you're doing in the community is huge. So, you know, I hope I'm answering the question. I know websites are vital. They are vital. They're needed in this day and age, especially.
So there was you know, another part to the question, and it says, you know, the search engine optimization or the Google search can boost a company's viewership by 19%, and that's just one tool. The final portion of their comment and statement was, what are some other tools that you would recommend to businesses who may not necessarily have this access?
Well, that's actually what you know, what we were looking to address, was one of the things that we started finding as we started looking into this was that, you know, as I mentioned before, you hear about, you know, sort of ClickFunnels and pay-per-click and a lot of these different, you know, sort of, you know, fancy sort of digital products, but they're all based on, you know, on customer information, on having a database of customer phone numbers or addresses or emails or something like that. And so many small businesses don't have any of kind of this basic, you know, any of this information, any of this, you know, sort of infrastructure. So, excuse me, Chris. I think I said, what was your original question? I think I started veering. I started answering a different question. Just bring me back real quick so I don't.
So
divert.
Bringing you back to that final component was, what other tools and resources would you recommend for people who are facing that barrier of, you know, the access to Google and website optimization?
Social media, I think, is the first. You know, it's really the first place to go. You know, because it's free. I mean, in terms of value, it's hard to you know, it's hard to beat free. And I know a lot of small businesses have reported, companies like Yelp, Instagram, Google have begun doing a lot of direct marketing, you know, sort of very aggressively, but very annoyingly. You know, one of our first beta clients was telling me about getting phone calls from Google, trying to sell him ads, trying to sell him this and that. But they were very pushy. They were obnoxious. They didn't know anything about the local market. And he's basically telling the guy, he's like, I've been here 50 years. You need me more than I need you. Beat it, you know? And this is an example of a place that's been wildly successful. you know, is a restaurant that's been in Hartford
Yeah.
for over 50 years now, and they're about to have a website for the very first time.
Fantastic. We've had a lot of success. We deal in B2B, so we use Facebook. We're posting there when we do stuff in the community, just so everyone knows what we're doing. But LinkedIn is really where our major marketing is, communication medium for social media, and that's worked out fantastic. You can have a no-cost account. I think for a little bit of a monthly fee, you can have more features, but there's definitely a significant amount of things you can do there. Connections are fantastic. You can certainly do postings. And on LinkedIn, it's a lot more about business that I've seen, and less like our pets and whatnot, which is also great, but that's, you know, more Facebook area, whatever. But yeah, LinkedIn is a fabulous resource, and I suggest people look into that.
Yeah, another one I will say, and I know we're all dealing with technology, but you know, word of mouth. I mean, there's nothing, that's one of the most powerful to me is word of mouth. You know, the relationships that you're building in chambers, things that you're doing within the community, but word of mouth is just so huge as far as, you know, getting your business out there and promoting it.
You know, and that's so true, Rahshun. And matter of fact, it makes me think of, you know, so some of the relationships that I've made here in the West Hartford Chamber, you know, in a relatively, you know, short period of time, you know, that I've been a member. And, you know, and the key thing is, one of you gentlemen alluded to it earlier, about trust, about how big trust is. And when I go to somebody from the chamber, somebody that I know from these things, there's that trust factor that I know, you know, this person is probably not going to screw me over. This person is probably, you know, is probably going to take good care of me. I can trust this person. Like, I'll give you guys a quick example. I have a birthday coming up in a few weeks, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, normally I like spending my birthdays at the casino, but with the reduced capacity and the place is flooded, I went by the other day and said, okay, yeah, it's not yet. And I thought to myself, normally I love to do a spa day, have a drink, get a massage, and just chill. Like, that's my idea of, you know, of heaven on my birthday. But I'm saying, you know, well, but if I'm not to do the casino, do the G spot, what am I going to do? And I said, wait a minute. I said, I know Morgan, you know, at Contours from, you know, the chamber. I said, I know they do massages. I know they got a whole spa thing. I said, yeah, let me go. Yeah, I said, yeah, let me do that. And so I called Morgan yesterday and set up a whole kind of thing for my birthday with a cut and style and the deep tissue massage and the whole 9 yards and everything. And now that's on my mind. I am so looking forward to that. But I'm so happy because of that trust factor. Because I'm not thinking like, man, did I pick the right place? You know, you kind of throw, Googling stuff. It's like throwing a dart on a dartboard. You know what I mean? You could see the reviews, and hopefully they're legit. Hopefully, you know, you made the right choice. But it's always a little like, ugh. But that trust factor is, you know, is so huge. Can't overstate it.
Yeah. So it brings us back to, you know, I think back in my past life in being a training consultant and teaching people about sales. And one of the things I used to tell people was about the idea of building an advocacy class. You know, essentially coming across people that you've built relationships with who are familiar with your work and are able to go out and tell the story about your work. And that goes a lot farther, because you think about it, you know, especially, you know, when I put it in context of growing up in Brooklyn, right? Anytime somebody needed something done, they go, you know, I need this thing done. And you don't have to have a full understanding for what that person does. You just have to have confidence in the work that they do. And ultimately you go, don't worry, I got a guy for that. Everybody wants to be the guy, right? And so when we apply this to business, you want to be the guy. You want to be the person that when that conversation comes up, you know, somebody looks and says, you know, I need to build a website, and Clark, can you help me out? I don't know anything about building websites, but I know Jorge does. And I know if I send somebody to Jorge's going to take care of them. Or, you know, I know enough about computers to mitigate my frustration. But when it gets a little bit more complex than what I know how to handle, I can go, you know what, let me shoot Avi a WhatsApp at 10 o'clock at night. I'm not recommending anybody hit Avi up at 10 o'clock at night, but Avi responds to me, and next thing I know, in my inbox, in my email, is a suggestion for how to replace my busted PC in my basement. So anytime somebody comes to me and they go, hey, I got a computer problem. Yo, you need to talk to my man, Avi. That's my guy. Avi will take care of you. You know, and, you know, shameless plug for Comcast. I'm a Comcast client and they take care of me, right? So it becomes, you know, even if we have these barriers, it's about finding the workarounds and using the systems that have traditionally served humans as long as we've had voices, word of mouth and relationships.
And the networking, I kind of feel like I kind of skipped something really big in the, you know, what you just asked a little while ago, you know, the virtual networking. That's, you know, I mean, I've been doing that, you know, pretty much most of that's what I spent, like a lot of us, spent the pandemic doing, was meeting folks, you know, across the country, establishing relationships with not just potential clients, but potential referrers, and sometimes folks that may have nothing to do with my business, you know, and that, you know, I would really encourage folks, you know, to do the virtual networking, because, you know, you meet a lot of great people. You meet a lot of people in fields or in jobs that you would have never met at the local, you know, at the local downtown in-person, you know, event. So that can open up, you know, sort of a ton of more resources. And, you know, you can also, you know, begin to find that trust factor there, because you see a lot of folks, you know, kind of over and over again. So, you know, so when you know, sort of like here, that you see these people all the time, that they're part of this community, you know, well, again, you know, they are less likely to screw me over. They're less likely to leave me hanging. They're less likely to do, you know, kind of a poor job for me. So I would really encourage folks that have, you know, that have the time, that have the ability. There's tons of free networking, you know, sort of opportunities available out there with groups like Network After Work and Happy Neighborhood Project. You know, there's, you know, Empower, Eric Lopkins group. There's a lot of little groups starting. So I would definitely encourage folks to do, you know, the virtual networking, because it's the next best thing to, you know, it is the in-person, you know what I mean? Because I, you know, as I was just mentioning, how close I've grown to the group here. I mean, I've only been here a few months. Have I met any of you in person? Like, none of you has ever seen, like, none of us have ever seen each other in real life yet.
Oh, still. So great. You could be a complete deep fake with all of your technology knowledge, and we wouldn't know. Thanks, Jorge. Way to build trust. Yeah. So, you know, we are coming up on you know, the allotted time that we have here together, and I just wanted to open it up to the panel. Any last suggestions, any final thoughts that you want to share with the people who so graciously listened to us for an hour and a half? Any suggestions or recommendations? And ultimately, how do we find you if people want to follow up? So, Avi, are you off mute?
I think I'm off mute.
Okay, cool. Do you want to lead us out?
Sure. Avi Smith-Rapaport, We Care Computers. You can find us at wecarecomputers.com. If you like the phone, you can call us at 860-836-4191, or you see, if I turn just the right way, you can hit us up at info@wecarecomputers.com. We'd love to chat with you about your IT needs, your company's IT needs, and if you're currently not as happy as you think you could be, give us a call.
And very quickly, Avi, how do they help you if they want to support what you're doing with getting devices to kids?
Our GoFundMe link. Can I put that? It's kind of a long link. Can I put? If I post it in the thing, yeah. Let me do that.
All right, great.
Okay.
And Jorge, any final thoughts, or how do they reach you if they want help designing a site?
Yeah, no, I would just, anyone out there who, you know, either has a small business, you know, or is looking to start one, or knows somebody, you know, in that situation, you know, and it could be someone who's going out on their own as an accountant. It could be, you know, it could be a small restaurant. It could be a landscaper. You know, really anybody that's ready to go out and chase that dream. really pursue that passion, that's ready to kind of go out on their own and, and do their own thing. Anybody that's either in that position or knows somebody in that position, we can help them, because the problem is very simple. It's, well, I know I need a website for my business nowadays. I don't want to spend $5,000 or more, and I really don't want to do this myself. What do I do? So that's the essential dilemma that we're here to answer. I have our information in the chat. I don't know if everyone can see it, but you can check us out at our website, which is discovermeweb.com. You can feel free to, I have my Calendly link in the chat. You can feel free to schedule a time to talk with us directly. We also offer complimentary audits of existing websites. So if you have a website for your business that you put together yourself or had someone do for you and you're not really sure if it's performing for you, we also do complimentary audits of existing websites. So we're happy to take a look completely for free with no obligation to take a look at an existing site. And it could be anything from, yeah, this site's doing pretty good for you, just a couple little tweaks we'd recommend, to hey, you got something really big going on here. You know why no one's coming to see your website? Because you don't have the SSL certificate. You don't have the security certificate that will even let people look at your site. So it could be anything, from somebody, we've seen people that will build their own sites, and sometimes they'll be very nice, but I can't get anybody to come.
So you'll help them from soup to nuts.
From soup to nuts. As much, sometimes folks will just give it all to us and say, look, just do it and show it to us before it goes live. Some folks might want to pick colors and pick templates, might want to have more input. We are here to help as much or as little as clients would like. We are here to provide that access, to these professional services for everyone, for every small business. We even offer payment flexibility. So our most basic package begins at $500, or it could be $50 a month. That way, as I said, to make sure that every business can afford access to these really would have become essential modern business services.
That is awesome. And thank you, Jorge.
Thank you.
Rahshun, would you like to close us out and give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, so if you're looking to get in contact with me, my name is Rahshun Balthrope. Everyone calls me Ra. But my email address, I'll give that, is Rahshun, RAHSHUN _ Balthrope, BALTHROPE @cable.comcast.com. All right. I talked about Rise, so Comcast Rise.com and InternetEssentials.com if you're interested in those programs. And once again, the shameless plug for employment. I'm looking for folks. So if you are interested, we'll put the information in the chat over here. But if you are interested, please get in contact.
Awesome. I was just about to ask you to throw that information in the chat. So I think we've covered a lot of information. We've had some great input. We've had some great solutions as to how we overcome some of these barriers. Predominantly it seems like getting the word out for existing services and expanding that education. With that, I will hand it back to our esteemed Chris Conway for any closing comments from the chamber.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chris, for doing such a wonderful job facilitating this discussion. And of course, thank you to our panelists for providing some insights and possible solutions to the issues that were discussed today. We truly appreciate it. And it was said multiple times, this was, really one of the things chambers of commerce do, first of all, but specifically the Minority Business Network is to try to expand that reach and get this information to the communities that need it so desperately. If you're coming in at the end of this, don't worry. It will, as soon as we stop, it'll be on Facebook Live and you can start back at the beginning. It will also be on the Chamber's YouTube channel as soon as we get the download. So you can certainly go back and watch this and share it with anybody that you think would find it interesting or meaningful, more importantly. And I would just like to thank the Chamber staff, of course, Jesse Bouclier and Kate Cobes for working all the machinery in the background to make these events work. And finally, just thank our sponsors once again, the North Star Realtor, Liberty Bank, of course, Comcast Business, and Westfield Bank, who was our technology sponsor. So thank you, and we will see you again for our next colorful conversation in 3 months. And keep an eye on our chamber Facebook page, Instagram, and emails. Once we pick a topic, we can communicate that out to you folks. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.